And of course, women at that period were having the same conversations that we're having now around gender and film. I don't think the conversations we're having today are new. They've been going on for a long time. Hopefully we're finding new ways to
I just want to thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to talking to you both and to talk about this intense movie that remind me when I was little that I used to watch some VHS. So that's awesome. So I'm going to start with you, Prano. What was I know that you have a short movie called Nasty, but what was like the whole inspiration for the script?
Yeah, actually, I had the idea for Censor before making Nasty, and I almost thought of Nasty as being like another story that could be going on at the same time as Enid's story in Censor. I originally kind of came up with the seed of the idea when I was reading this article, and in the article it was talking about the Hammer horror period, which was slightly earlier than when Censor is set. And it talked about how at this time the censors would cut the image of blood on a breast of a woman because they believed it would make men likely to commit rape. And I thought, well, surely a lot of the censors were men, so if these images make us do these terrible things, then how come these censors are protected from that? And I guess that was like the beginning point of the idea. And from there I started to explore censorship through the ages, what has ended up becoming the BBFC over here in the UK. But I landed very quickly in the video nasty era in the 80s because of the moral panic that happened around the video nasties, these kind of low budget horror films that came out on VHS that were suddenly available in the home because VHS happened. So now people could watch these films and rewind them and rewatch them, and there was a huge amount of fear in the UK about how that was going to affect people and whether this was going to spawn the next generation of murderers and psychopaths. And it's really fascinating to be able to kind of look back at that in hindsight. So that was kind of a bit of where the idea started anyway.
Yeah, and for you, Niamh, what was about Prano's work from before that made you to want to be part of this project?
I met Prano at the Screen International Screen Service tomorrow, and we just kind of hit it off from there. Really, we were sat next to each other at this dinner, and just started talking about movies and films. And she was talking about the script that she had, and so when the audition came in and I watched Nasty, I was just like, she's amazing. She's doing something with cinema that I hadn't kind of experienced, and it was really exciting because she's kind of created her own. It's like, when you talk about film directors, and I think what people are going to be like, it's a Prano Bailey Bond film. It's got its own tone, it's got its own atmosphere to it that you would have with like Tarantino. But yeah, it's her passion with film, and the way in which she tells stories is incredibly unique.
I enjoy watching. Of course, there's some not scary, but like weird scenes that I was like, oh my God, how come they do that? You know what I mean? But I think like there is this like this the aesthetics, like it's very gloomy, very like a little foggy. Did you get inspiration from any directors from before, Prano?
I think the inspiration specifically for Censor came from a few different places. For the kind of more bleak, gloomy 80s Britain look, I was actually looking at a lot of photographers from the 80s. I felt like photography in the UK from that period was the best source of inspiration because it was like the real bleak 80s, not the kind of pop, shoulder pads, big hair 80s that we kind of stereotype as the 80s. So I was looking at photographers like Martin Parr and Paul Graham. But then obviously the world that Enid travels into is this really like lurid, vibrant, colourful sort of, kind of crazy world. And obviously I was looking to the video nasties or, VHS horror, the kind of films that were coming out back when this film is set. So some of the directors that I leaned into, I guess, were Lucio Fulci, so films like The Beyond and House by the Cemetery, and then Dario Argento, so something like Suspiria, and those kind of colours would really influence Enid's dreams. And so I was kind of cherry picking inspiration from all over the place, to try and communicate with my heads of department, my crew, about what I was going for in those moments. So you bring all of those things in, but I think inspiration comes from all kinds of places, doesn't it? Sometimes we don't even know.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree with you. Sometimes we need to, our mind goes in places that we we can not imagine, and you get inspiration from. That's amazing. And for you, Niamh, I want to ask you, what was it for you, like to bring that 80s look and feel? Like, I can, you know what I mean, the way that your hair is up, the way that you look at the camera, the way that you, like, your mesmerized, like you look like an 80s person. How was like to put that together?
That was the amazing team around me. I just had to show up, say the lines, and convince people that I was saying them. With Saffron, an incredible costume designer, who she was so passionate and had such a like kind of iconic idea of what the character was going to look like, and I was just all there for it. All I wanted for the character was, my only contribution was glasses, because myself and Prano had kind of discussed about the idea of the glasses and where they come on and come off, and the idea that we, as people, we censor ourselves with filters, and even now we use filters to kind of take away or add something to appearance. And with her, I think that with these glasses, that became almost like a physical barrier between her as the person and her as the censor. And it was just really interesting where Prano had decided where the lights were going to come off. And Ruth, our costume designer, it was this character that she's not plain Jane, but she's not obsessed with beauty and trying to look pretty, and there was all these kind of very subtle and muted kind of colors. And when she kind of heads into this other part and discovers this other kind of part of herself, and how she kind of broke down the character. But yeah, I was just very lucky that the team around me were incredibly passionate about this character. So I was just very lucky.
Yeah, and like, come back, I'm gonna keep it with you. What was like the most challenging scene for you? Was in the woods? Was talking to the producer? the scene?
I think there's a turning point for the character in the whole story, and that's when she watches Don't Go in the church. And I knew how important that scene was in the entire story. So it wasn't a challenge, it was more so, I suppose, those pre-nervous kind of butterflies, the kind of the night before, of making sure that you as the actor hit certain beats that you know will be kind of detrimental to the character and telling the story. But luckily, myself and Prano had kind of talked about it in advance of how we would kind of access that certain emotion, and that the idea of the character saying everything but without saying a single line of dialogue in that scene. So when she watches Don't Go in the church, Prano and myself had kind of discussed visually watching something that would have this feeling where it would start in your gut and kind of work its way up and out. But on the day, we just kind of went with music, and it wasn't a challenge. It was more, I suppose, it was a challenge, but it was one that felt like it kind of adding to this kind of toolkit as an actor and how you can access different performances through other tools.
And for you, Prano, as a point of view of a director, what was like the most challenge not doesn't need to be just the scene, can be any process that you have, like always the challenge to bring this movie together, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because maybe if you've asked me that beforehand, you have one thing in your head, and then afterwards you look back and, you know, maybe the things that you thought were going to be a challenge weren't. But I think for me, I guess it was something that we did very fluidly when it came. But I think in the build up to making the film, I was really always thinking, how do we keep the audience inside Enid's head? Because you're writing a character who on the page never really says exactly what she's thinking. You know, she's always giving a censored perspective of what's going on, and she's often interpreting things in a scene in a different way to how the other character intends it. So I think you go into a project knowing that that's going to be a challenge and designing the film in order to meet that challenge. So for example, you cast an amazing actor who is incredibly nuanced in their performance, i.e. Niamh Algar, you know, who can put thought on screen, who can let the audience in to the character through their performance. And that was probably one of the biggest and most important things I did as a director, was finding someone who was able to tell Enid's story and let us in emotionally. But then it's also about how you kind of work with all the departments, you know, how you shoot the actor, you know, how you use the sound to kind of always be bringing the audience into Enid's journey, even though actually she's keeping everything very close to her chest for at least the majority of the film. Things change later, obviously, as you know.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. I always talk to with directors, producers, and I know how much work and how much time you guys put on the projects. And I think it's amazing. Like what do you accomplish? Like the final product, what I watched, I think was really good. So I was really glad and awesome. And there is something that a particular scene that her Niamh's character says about, make a comment with her colleague about the male perception on the that part on the woman. Oh my God, I forgot like the way that I wanna, let me look at it. The violence against woman, one of the scenes. So I think that's very important. I think was important to show that, because she, even though the movie sets on the 80s, shows that the woman back then was already like surprised with the reaction, but she needs to accept because it was a male like society like oriented, male society oriented, I don't know, something like that. That you did that on purpose, Prano? How was like the approach? Sorry if I was confused, but
No, it's okay. I mean, in terms of there's like, you know, everyday sexism littered within the film, and I've been asked about that before, and I guess it's there because that's real life. You know, that's the experience we go through as women in real life. Obviously, this is like a film directed by a woman and starring a woman. You know, the lead is a woman. I always wanted to, I guess, subvert the idea of the woman in the forest, you know, in the 90s. There was like an element of me wanting to do that rather than her being the victim and running for her life, that actually could she end up being, I don't want to give too much away, but not that. You know, that is she screaming and running away, or is she screaming and chasing? I guess you're coming at it to try and make to try and freshen these things up. But it was funny because when we were writing the film, for example, at one point, me and my co-writer were talking about Frederick North, the director in the movie. And we were trying to make it a female character. We were trying to make the director a woman, but it just didn't it felt too forced because there was so few women being able to make horror films during this period. You know, I don't think any of the video nasties were directed, the films on that list were directed by women. And of course, women at that period were having the same conversations that we're having now around gender and film. I don't think the conversations we're having today are new. They've been going on for a long time. Hopefully we're finding new ways to change things. But I don't think the conversations and the comments are new.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it's the way that she reacts, because she needs to react, is the way that she, okay, I need to accept that, but right now we don't accept that. We need to speak it up. That's awesome. So I just want to thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to talk to you both. A lot of success, and I hope everybody liked the movie like I did. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you like this video, don't forget to comment, to like, and subscribe to our channel right here.